Welcome. Today, I am here with Ruth Shepard, who is a healing woman of all kinds, doing body work and homeopathy and all types of support for pregnancy, postpartum, supporting families and women. Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Britta. Yes.
I would love you to share who you are and what you do, and how does your work come through you as a vessel?
Sure, sure. So I have two modalities. Like you said, I have homeopathy and craniosacral therapy. And the way that I was trained in craniosacral therapy was incorporating myofascial unwinding. So I work full body. And I've been doing that for 18 years. I actually got trained when I was pregnant with my youngest child, my fourth baby, and he's now 18 and graduated high school. So it's a new chapter for me to not be raising children. And I have been working with babies from the get go. And I do work on all ages with the body work. I work on all ages in homeopathy as well. But working with babies and children is kind of my niche. But again, I work on everybody, whole family. Uh, I got into this because I was pregnant with my fourth and I was having some issues with that fourth pregnancy. We had moved and built a house, and the kitchen wasn't available for a long time. So we were eating out, and I wasn't taking care of my body before I conceived my fourth child. And when I got pregnant, I had this gallbladder attack that, just took me out. I was 8 weeks pregnant and vomiting, other fluids coming out, nursing my toddler. And I lost like 30 pounds in 3 weeks. And when I asked to go to the hospital, it's a it's an important thing. Um, I went to the hospital, they kept me overnight, they gave me IV fluids and all that good stuff. Came out of it and had my first midwifery appointment with my regular midwife, and she's like, "Ruth, this is your fourth baby. You live 45 minutes away from me now. What do you want from me?" And I'm like, "I need you to keep me on track nutritionally." And then out of my subconscious, I blurted out to my midwife, and I need craniosacral therapy and homeopathy. And I was dabbling in homeopathy for my children at that time, and I had been exposed to craniosacral therapy. Granted, this was almost 20 years ago. And my midwife pulls out a brochure and says, "Well, Dr. Carol Phillips is in town, and she needs pregnant models for her students to work on." And I'm like, "I'm there. Take me." So I went. It was a 3-day module that I was going to for pregnancy. And I just went on a Saturday, listened through the lecture in the morning, and then got worked on in the afternoon by the students. And afterwards, I went up to Dr. Carol Phillips, and my background at that time was I had a 2-year bookkeeping degree. I had a 2-year paralegal degree. I was teaching childbirth classes, and I was a birth doula. And I had 4 kids, and the birth doula and stuff I couldn't go to as much because I had more and more kids and couldn't drop things in the middle of the night. So that's my background when I took this training, or when I went to this training. And I just went up to Dr. Carol Phillips and asked her, "Is this something that I can do? Not being a body worker, not being a chiropractor, not being a doctor." And she's like, "Oh, Ruth, with your background," because of course I had introduced myself, "with your background, you see all these chiropractors I'm training? They're afraid to work on babies. You're not afraid to work on babies. And, with your 4 children and your background, we need you." And I literally took my newborn to my last module of training, and my midwife started sending me babies and moms to work on. And so, what I do in cranial sacral therapy with myofascial unwinding is I look for restrictions in the body and I unwind them. And in particular, we can work with the cranials, we can work intraorally with the mouth, and we can work with the whole spine and the extremities to make sure that a baby is comfortable after birth. So, of course, this helps with breastfeeding issues and weight gain issues and fussiness issues, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
So that's the body work. Now, if we want to jump into homeopathy. So I had also started to see a homeopath during that pregnancy and got better with homeopathy and eating well. And so I was seeing a regular homeopath during my pregnancy. And then after I had the baby, then I brought my toddler to the homeopath. And the homeopath asked me, "Okay, Ruth, what remedies would you think of to give your child? And I said, well, I'm debating between this remedy and this remedy. And I had basic knowledge at that time, had studied a materia medica, and that was about it, and seen a homeopath a couple of times. And um, my homeopath, and this was, oh, let me go back. 2007 is when I took cranial sacral training. I was working on babies. And then in 2000, and it was a few years later after that, so probably 2010. At my homeopath that I had been seeing, she's like, "So you just, and I explained to her, well, I'm thinking between this remedy, but I think it's this remedy because of X, Y, Z, and this, this remedy does have PDQ, but it doesn't quite do X, Y, Z, and so I think, my child needs this one." And she's like, "You just did exactly what a homeopath does, is you compare symptoms to remedies and you narrow it down and kick one out because that one doesn't apply." And she's like, "So when are you going to homeopathy school?" I'm like, "What?" I have 4 small children, and I'm doing this cranial sacral gig on the side, and at that time I was doing home visits with postpartum women and babies. So I was like, how am I gonna do homeopathy? So by 2011, I was in homeopathy school, and it was a 2-year program. And then I became a single parent, and then it took me 5 years to complete a 2-year program. And with all that said, it kind of takes over your life. And one of the beautiful things about these two modalities is that they are both energy work. In craniosacral therapy and myofascial unwinding, even though we're working in the physical realm, we are also working on the energetic plane. And we are shifting the energy in the body to make it have better energy, is more in alignment, has better homeostasis, and is healthier. And it's the same exact thing with homeopathy. We're talking about energetic medicine where we are shifting. There's even research now that tells us we can even shift our DNA and we can turn on and off DNA, such as perhaps the MTHFR gene. And we can move towards homeostasis and move towards health and less susceptibility to illness, and et cetera, et cetera. So they do blend. They're not two separate things. And I use them daily. I have a very busy practice in both cranial sacral and homeopathy. And I did just close my office down for 2 months. It was supposed to be 3 months and it got shortened to write a book on homeopathy and the microbiome because I am. And there's like 3 books I need to write. There's the 18 years of experience of doing cranial sacral therapy and myofascial unwinding. And there's homeopathy and the microbiome because during the pandemic in 2020, I had an opportunity to get a bachelor's degree in homeopathy out of the UK. So I'm like, pandemic, stay home. What are you going to do? Go get a bachelor's degree from, um, and to do that, I had to submit a research proposal. And so I submitted a research proposal on homeopathy and group B strep in pregnancy. I had been studying group B strep since I was a childbirth educator. Okay. And I actually remember before there was a protocol for A, testing for group B strep, and B, giving antibiotics if you test positive in labor. So I'm actually old enough to remember what it was before that, and then have seen how it's metamorphosed into microbiome issues, long-term health issues. And I wanted to have something out there that people could choose other than antibiotics straight from the get-go, and help with long-term health for families. And now my research project is being taken up by Free and Healthy Children International, which is, we can put a website in there. But yeah, we're working on microbiome using homeopathy for microbiome issues and group B strep for pregnancy and such. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. And this is why, Ruth, I knew you were the exact right person to talk to here because there's so much of a richness and a depth in your work. And I feel what you bring is that energy of a true matriarch, where you have been doing this work for, like you're saying, 18 plus years on all different levels. And you've seen the evolution of the fields, you've felt the transformation on people's real bodies and energy systems, and now bringing in revolutionary ways to treat these kind of conventional things like root beer strep. I think what I really see with you is how these like, how to connect all the dots, you know what I mean? That, we may not just need one thing in isolation, um, that our gut microbiome and issues that may present years after our own birth
Mhm.
could be traced back to some of these things, whether it's antibiotics too early on that were maybe overprescribed, or whether it's energy disturbances or tensions in the system. So there's so much to unpack here. I'm so excited. I would like to kind of go back a little bit to the cranial sacral therapy piece, and we'll kind of go like maybe piece by piece here. Start with the cranial sacral. What are you seeing with a baby, with a mother, in terms of the tensions in their systems, and why,
Mm.
therefore, a woman want to have this supportive?
So, I just recently have actually connected the dots that tongue tie directly actually might be a microbiome issue. And of course, I believe there's a lot of things that go into having a tongue tie, but we have an epidemic of tongue tie diagnosis. I don't know why that is. And if you notice, I said tongue tie diagnosis.
Mm.
It was not a thing when I was having babies to have every one of them laser clipped within a week of being born. It just wasn't a thing. Only the babies that say had a cleft palate or a cleft lip were being cut. And yes, I fully agree that the tongue is directly related to having a good latch, having a good breastfeeding relationship, having a healthy baby to, suckle and be able to nurse and get the nutrients. All of that is 1,000% important. But I just see so much that the answer is cutting. And my heart breaks a little bit because the connective tissue, the fascia, is so important. There's electrical signals that go through the fascia. And when we're cutting it and creating scar tissue, how is that affecting those signals is my question. And is there some way that we can be less invasive? And perhaps can we maybe move the cranial bones and shift the cranial bones and align the jaw? And perhaps what I see mostly is compression on the occipital area. And I've done, again, research is kind of my geeky thing that I do in my spare time. And when we are exposed to things like antibiotics, and it actually decreases the sponginess of our fascia. So we've got this like interminable circle, hamster wheel that we're on. Where are we creating our problem? And is the easiest answer to say, hey, go and cut? Now, what I love about people who help with tongue tie release is that they are helping. Okay. I have no judgment on anybody who has had their child's tongue tie, cut or lasered, or anyone who suggests it or does it, even. Because we're trying to find a solution that is a very important thing to having a positive breastfeeding relationship, which is so important to lay the foundation of health in the microbiome to get that breastfeeding going. And I love that we have so many options, but my experience of 18 years of doing body work and doing myofascial work and craniosacral therapy is that it's very few babies that need to have it cut. And the second thing that is happening with that is the stretching. And I have seen it be so invasive and so, I'm going to say it, I'm sorry, violating to the baby. The mouth is a very intimate spot. And, just think about how, do you feel great going to the dentist? Do you love being poked and prodded and pushed open? And, you know, do you have anxiety about going to the dentist because of those experiences? And I'm not blaming dentists. I'm saying it's an intimate place and we have to be respectful of it. And my experience of 18 years of doing body work is that very few babies need to have it clipped as a solution when there's other solutions that can be done first,
Mhm.
such as occipital release, a tongue release, a throat release, a neck release, a respiratory diaphragm release, a pelvic release. because the gut tube starts at the tongue and goes all the way down your esophagus into your intestines and comes out, yes, the anus. And if any part of that is misaligned, it's going to pull at that tongue. And there's so many simple things that we can do to release it that are not invasive, not painful, and don't have long-term issues.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like what I love too when you give that visual of the digestive tract and pulling on the tongue, and it's kind of undeniable to think of, yeah, what we can shift within the body. And what I love about cranial sacral therapy is just how gentle it is. It's just such a gentle holding with babies. You seems like you barely even have to do much pressure at all. I mean, maybe sometimes in extreme cases a little more, but it's just beautiful. So it sounds like there's a lot coming to you with perhaps breastfeeding challenges and then therefore tongue tie. I think it's true. Right now in the paradigm, tongue tie is just this buzzword that even babies who may or may not have it are they're being assessed for it. And it's
Mhm,
right. There's this intention to try to solve this problem well.
mhm.
But are we over intervening, and is it the right solution? And I'm curious too, do you feel that different ways of being born impact, like, versus C-section care, C-section birth versus vaginal delivery? Does that impact what you're seeing with babies?
So that's a very good question. And I will tell you that any birth can have issues with misalignment of the cranial bones and compression on the body that is uncomfortable for the baby. I've seen gentle home water births needing a myofascial release. I've seen C-section babies needing myofascial release. I've seen quick labors needing craniosacral and myofascial release. I've seen long labors needing myofascial and craniosacral release. Out of all the babies I've worked on, and I haven't calculated them probably in the last 5 years of how many babies I've worked on, but it's probably well past 1,000, if not in the 2,500 range. Um, and I my it doesn't really matter how they came into the world. And yes, there are certain things that can contribute to worse. But yeah, I've seen home birth babies, hospital birth babies, water babies, land babies, all needing this care. Out of all of those babies I've worked on, only about maybe two of them I didn't probably need to work on. Maybe five, between two and five. But you know who I needed to work on and who they brought with them? The mother. Baby's usually like, "I'm fine.
Yeah.
Mom's hurting."
Yeah, it's such a I mean, no wonder pregnancy pulls everything in every which direction.
Yeah.
We've lost a lot of our, I would say, like, ancestral practices of how to really restore and bring alignment in that postpartum phase. So what do you see in moms? What's happening there?
Oh, there's definitely shoulder and neck issues that need to be worked out, whether that's pre-pregnancy or postpartum with nursing. Because what are you doing? You're doing this, your neck is being, pulled, your shoulders are up, holding the baby, you know, you're this is what you're stuck in. So that needs to be relaxed. And that's putting pressure on the vagus nerve. And then if we're having issues with breastfeeding, then you're worried that your baby's not gaining and baby's not latching and it's painful, and then the tightness of the latch, all of that can be worked out, not to mention things that happened at the birth, such as something that caused a tear, such as like a compound presentation or misalignment of the head or awkward positioning as you push. Birth is an athletic event, and I mean, do marathon runners get a massage afterwards? Do they get some body work after they do a big marathon? I bet they do.
Bet they do. Yeah.
Birth is a marathon. Birth is an athletic event.
Yeah, and there's, like, the physical components of realignment, but I think there's also so much to be said with the emotional nurturing,
Oh yeah,
space holding
for
of
sure.
being held and touched as a postpartum mother, being witnessed in this new experience, and especially being witnessed in some of the challenges you're facing with actually some gentle, supportive touch and care that can very realistically turn things around.
Absolutely. And, there's a lot that goes into birth emotionally that we don't talk about. And this actually, I can bring in homeopathy is that there's so many good remedies that we can give for grief, for a sensation of being violated, for numbness, apathy, and even for, quite honestly, just plainly giving arnica a postpartum
Right.
for just injury, and stretching of the muscles. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, exactly. And of course, we have great remedies for sepsis. We have great remedies for feeling overwhelmed. We have great remedies for nutritional deficiency. We have great remedies for actually, so I recently read a research article on how breastfeeding lack of milk is associated with lowered sodium levels. So we have cell salts that can help with raising your mineral level in your body. Of course, crude is important. We got to get those crude, but these are what is happening on an energetic level. That is, so salt is actually in homeopathy associated with, yes, grief, but being unable to cry, lack of salt, lack of fluid, lack of then that's going to affect your milk supply. And if we can just have a remedy that kind of flips that over into getting your energy plane to process that and maybe crave it and consume it a bit better and more efficiently, that's a beautiful way to help postpartum as well. And it's so gentle and non-toxic.
Yes, let's talk homeopathy more because I am a believer. I mean, I just can't even, it's almost unfathomable how simple and supportive these remedies can be. And of course, there are thousands upon thousands of them.
Mhm.
You've mentioned all these beautiful experiences you see. Like, why should mothers think about homeopathy, whether it may be in pregnancy and preparation? In the postpartum phase, you've named some really specific supports, but, like, even just for homeopathy and getting into it and understanding it, what would you say about that?
Well, I think it's always a good idea to, if you're into reading, definitely read a book that talks about homeopathy. I like Dana Ullman's work. Uh, he's been a homeopath for like 40 years, and he's got some great books for pregnancy and children. But if there's so many introductory online courses as well, either through a homeopathic school or perhaps a homeopath giving kind of a mommy's homeopathy group that maybe meets once a week or once a month, and you learn about basic homeopathy and some basic remedies as well. But homeopathy's been around since the mid 1700s. There used to be homeopathic hospitals at the turn of the century. So they started to go away about 1910 when the American Medical Association was actually created to the kind of squash homeopathy. So that's a whole history lesson that, we don't need to go into, but it's pretty interesting that it was actually created to basically badmouth homeopathy.
So effective, really. I mean, it's
Right.
effective, it's affordable, it's
Yes.
accessible, and it's reproducible easily reproduced. I mean, you can just create your own remedies right at home with
You can.
you
You
can well, you
can.
can replicate your remedies.
Right, right. And you can put it in water and take it in water. You can take it dry in the pellet form.
Right.
You can sniff it and make it work. People who are highly sensitive, I will just have them sniff the pellets and it'll get into the olfactory mucous membranes and get into the body that way. So, and again, homeopathy is true. Okay, I don't like the word quantum. I mean, I'm going to talk about this, but it's true energy medicine in that what it is doing is say you have something that's not working. You've got it in the system, you got it, something that's not quite firing right in your system, whatever that is, whether it's an emotion or whether it's a physical symptom. And homeopathy goes to that malfunctioning signal that's not occurring and it either gives it more energy so that it can now work or it tampers down if it's moving too fast. And so you get this calming sensation or you get this energetic sensation when you take remedies. And then your symptoms just start to figure themselves out because we're not altering the body. We're merely getting rid of the things that are not making it function properly. So healing actually occurs through time through your own innate immune system, through your own body calming down and functioning better and having energetic flow better through your body. And that's true whether you do yoga, qigong, tai chi, they're all acupuncture, they're all using the same things. They're using the energy systems of the body and things that get stuck, just like in acupuncture. Um, we're going to, give it some stimulation with a needle, and homeopathy is giving it stimulation as well. So, quantum is more about small doses, which homeopathy is. But homeopathy is a step beyond small doses, such as nanoparticles. It is energetic. It is not just something crude and small form. It is actually potentized, which means shaken. Okay. And I'm not so sure that this shaking isn't also bringing in some sound vibration that is helping to make that remedy more of a, there isn't a word for it. Quantum doesn't even isn't right. To make it more energetic, to make it more, I don't know, do we have a word?
Yeah. Beyond it captures, I think, right, what we're saying, that the frequency layers, the energy layers, and
Right.
combines it into a medicine that you can take. And it's not a medicine in a way because it's a remedy, right? You're saying it's going to have an action that matches your system. And so, two people can take the same remedies and it's not going to do the same thing. And as we've mentioned, I don't know if we've mentioned it in this call, but there's no chemical constituent. So there's not a chemical manipulation in the body. It's an energetic one. And
Right.
then the body does its own thing, right?
Exactly, exactly. Just like, and then let me jump back to cranial sacral to explain that. So, like, I remember speaking to somebody about cranial sacral with babies, and and especially with a tongue tie, and and she was saying my experience is that a baby needs several sessions to have the tongue tie release, and and I just piped up in this group, like my experience is that it doesn't necessarily have to be several sessions. Okay. If a baby is ready to release, then, the fascia just unfolds as it should. And I don't have to manipulate where that fascia goes. It's like water. It finds its way and it just unfolds and finds its level where it needs to sit and be and have flow. And there's really no manipulating that I need to do. Perhaps like uh, physical therapy or maybe even a chiropractic adjustment that puts a bone back into alignment. The bones will fall into alignment because things just unwind and fall into the proper place of where they should be. So it's pretty cool. I could talk on and on about it.
And I love with both of these methods, you're really trusting the body's innate healing capacity
Mhm.
and a higher intelligence, perhaps, as well, right? We're not just saying, all right, like, I know what to do here.
Completely.
Kind of both surrendering to
Hmm.
the inner wisdom and a higher wisdom that,
Hmm.
I don't know that there are words for it always.
Right.
And
Every time I would go, especially in the beginning, when I had doubts about, if what I was feeling was right, or if I had doubts about if I was effective, or if I had doubts of if I was doing it right, I would just pray on the way to a postpartum visit. I'm just showing up, please God, please universe, show me what you want me to do to help. And I will tell you that, every single time, if I go in with some sort of intention, like I'm going to fix this, I'm the expert. um, it never works that smoothly. But if I go in with, show me what you want me to see, baby, show me what you want to have worked on, and I just go in with the experience of I'm here to help, and that just being observant sometimes and of course listening, like you've already mentioned, is so important to have some, a mom who's maybe had a stressful labor to talk about that and be like, yeah, that was pretty rough, and no judgment on it. Everything is an experience and everything is a journey. I'm certainly not here to judge. But perhaps I can give some insight on, like, I think that you had a tear because, this baby's jaw is off to the left because the hand was sitting right here.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think this listening piece is so beautiful because in body work and in homeopathy, I find it in both ways. There's a deep listening, with fascia. To me is the system of listening. It's our inner intuition. It's the organ of intuition. And when we listen to the fascia, which is sometimes screaming out in pain or sometimes blocking a flow or what have you, we listen, we tend there's a response, there's an answer, but we do have to listen, right?
Hmm.
We do have to hear it. And the other thing I love with listening in homeopathy is like a homeopath really listens. They're not asking you, okay, what's your symptom? And here's the protocol. Bam, bam, bam. They're saying, what's the emotional thing? What's the family history? It's just a very nuanced listening that I just find is really part of the healing process. It helps bring awareness to the mother or the baby or whoever's seeking it, right? It shines light onto these layers that maybe nobody has ever asked about before and really listened to. And I think certainly in our conventional systems, we don't have that space for listening. And I really see these, modalities as pathways to prevent getting into that cascade of conventional medicine that has its place and yet can be harmful a little too soon. What do you think about that?
So you asked me about why would somebody seek homeopathy in pregnancy? And there's actually research that shows that woman who's gone through and had homeopathic support, that she has less trauma, she has less. I don't know about a length of labor, that I don't believe that was studied, but she has a healthier birth, a healthier postpartum, healthier baby. So there's actually research that focuses on that. And I think that's exciting. And that speaks for itself, of why somebody would choose homeopathy. And coming back into modern medicine, Western medicine, a lot of what Western medicine does is manage, control, and suppress. And um, in my opinion, that never truly heals to manage, control, and suppress. It just makes us think that we can get through the next day, right? You can manage your emotions, manage your pain, control your emotions with various medications, control your pain and really truly numb it, which is suppress your pain. But my question is, why is the body doing this? So often in Western medicine, we get the diagnosis that covers who, what, where, and when, right? But does it cover how and why? And if we're not asking, how did this occur and why is it happening? Can we find a solution and a cure if we're not asking those questions? And I don't see many doctors asking how and why, and then, really they're doing the who, what, where, when, so that they can plug it into AI and get a prescription, a pharmaceutical prescription for the symptom that we have, figured out that all your symptoms come to this button, and is an SSRI appropriate for grief? Or should you be experiencing that? Is an Oxycontin appropriate for your pain, or a Tylenol or a Motrin? Or could we hydrate? Could we give some trace minerals? Could we give some cell salts? Could we give a grief remedy? Could we, there's so many things. Could we give arnica? Could we give so many things that are actually going to help the body to heal rather than just manage, control, and suppress?
It's powerful. Yeah, and to loop it into even what you're describing with your work with the microbiome and the readiness of overprescribing antibiotics. And what I see a lot is, these postpartum families going in for a PCP to a pediatrician, and then, their baby gets sick the first time or, things like this. And they're kind of looped into this model. Like,
Yeah.
what would you recommend as an alternative for that?
Oh, well, of course, there's homeopathy and there's craniosacral therapy.
Right.
That's my short answer. But I work with families in my homeopathic side of my practice all over the globe. Of course, majority of them, 95% are in the US, but it's all over the US as well.
Hmm.
I have East Coast, I have West Coast, I have Southern clients, I have Northern clients, and of course the Midwest as well. Anyway, my point is you can get support for homeopathy, especially in the digital age. You can get that at any time, anywhere. There's so many resources now, even in the middle of the night. There's like a homeopathic house call where you can call up a homeopath that's on call during that time frame and you can get a remedy suggestion and use that. I train parents about the benefits of a fever and how not to suppress it with antipyretics such as Tylenol and Motrin and ibuprofen and how important it is. And then, of course, suggest remedies that can help with the fever and help that to process efficiently so that we can avoid any adverse effects from Tylenol, which has been in the news lately. And I've talked about Tylenol to my clients for decades. It has been in the research for decades that it harms the liver and depletes the glutathione pathway and just basically drains your immune system. This is not new news to people in the alternative medicine community. It's just now being out in front in the media. And I have alternatives. I have gotten through families with fevers, rashes, constipation, loose bowels, vomiting, stomach bugs, measles, whooping cough, COVID, you know, postpartum C-section, so many things that we can use that help you to avoid damaging your microbiome with pharmaceutical products like antibiotics and steroids. And so I could go on and on, SSRIs and antipyretics and pain relievers, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. It's almost like, I think for people who aren't familiar with homeopathy and these treatment modalities, it's, at least for me, even early on, it kind of seems like it's too good to be true.
I
Like
know.
we
I
really
know.
can treat this all, but
And you get so many people that are like, I Googled homeopathy and it's quackery and, I don't believe in homeopathy. And my response to that is, does gravity need you to believe in it to work? Gravity doesn't care if you believe in it or not. Homeopathy doesn't care
yeah.
if you believe in it or not.
Yeah, there's been
Gravity.
studies on that actually
Uh-huh.
with homeopathy specifically that people who were not aware of taking remedies had the same healing outcomes.
Yes. Yes, there is.
Which is yeah. So I think it's interesting too because I think in the energy world and things like that, sometimes there's a lot of emphasis on needing to believe or
Mhm.
mindset or placebo, these types of things. And yet actually with homeopathy, they've really shown that no, the remedies, if it's the right remedy, it works.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's truly where people get like hung up is, it's like, oh, I tried homeopathy and it didn't work for me. And it's like, well, either you didn't try the right one or you didn't try the right potency or you didn't try the right length of time, you know?
Yeah.
And that's truly where a trained homeopath is, a godsend because they can tell you those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Well, I'm just grateful for you sharing your wisdom here and for all of the interweaving elements, of the body and actual remedies we can do and the microbiome, which might need to be a whole conversation in itself.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would say to a pregnant mom, a postpartum mom around these things? What do you
Yeah.
do the best stuff?
Well, there's so many things that are that we could say. And really, it comes down to trusting your instincts and really listening to that gut and listening to the intuitive thoughts that come into your mind, because that is your gut speaking to you. And actually, when we learn about the microbiome, there's actually, just like homeopathy and even fascial work and craniosacral work, that there's a vibration, there's a frequency that is occurring in the microbiome that the bacteria are communicating through this frequency, just like homeopathy. So, yeah, listen to those signals. Listen to what your gut's telling me, just like, my midwife asked me, So Ruth, what do you need? I'm like, I need craniosacral and homeopathy. When it wasn't even a huge piece of my life, I had been introduced to them, but hadn't, certainly wasn't going to a craniosacral therapist or to a homeopath regularly. Yeah, those things will come out, and sometimes we have to be exposed to something like 7 to 10 times before it actually sinks into our brain. So that's okay too. So, also, during COVID, I had to reframe um, my work, and I had always wanted to teach what I do. So, being a childbirth educator, homeschooling my children off and on, they did go to public school for a while. But my point is that I have this need to teach because I don't believe that I'm the guru. I don't believe that I'm the practitioner that can do everything. I believe that everybody can do this, such as learning craniosacral with myofascial release, teach for all level one that I created. I call my work embody balancing. And I created a 3-day program where level one is learning the basics, how to touch, how to feel energy, how to use it on your family members to help release things such as, um, honestly, a headache or falling off the swings and hitting on your bottom, releasing your sacrum, and any injury to your wrist, to your arm. So parents can really learn this. Anybody interested can learn this, in my opinion. It just takes a matter of being introduced to it, practicing, and recognizing that what you're feeling. And I have a level one coming up in Sedona. I've been invited to Sedona to teach down there if anybody's in the Phoenix area. And that will be February 20th through the 22nd. And feel free to email me for questions on that. And so that's 9 to 5, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, February 20th through the 22nd in Sedona. And then I'm trying to remember my dates in Colorado, and I have to look it up. So bear with me as I look at my calendar. But I am doing a level one, two, and three. Level one, again, is for basics. Learn the basics. It's for everybody. Level two is intraoral work, where you'll learn how to release for tension from dentistry, tongue ties, et cetera. Headaches, sorry, TMJ. It's right here. And then level three is specifically designed for people who want to work with babies and are midwives, doulas, and such. Now, each level builds on each other because what we learn in level one, you will be tailoring down for the babies in level three. I recently got MEAC approved, which means that's MEAC, and that's the midwifery education accreditation. So midwives can get CEUs for my classes. And like I said, I was going to tell about the one in the Denver area. I just have to look at my calendar, what those dates are. Okay. It's going to be March 20th, 21st, and 22nd for level one. And level two is going to be June 14th on a Sunday. And then level three will be June 19th, 20th, and 21st over the weekend. So over a long weekend.
Amazing.
Anyway, yeah, feel free to contact me at my email about that. You can also visit my website, which is truth, T plus my first name, RUTH, and then my last name, Shepard, SHEPARD. Come.
Great. And these trainings would just sounds like they would be wonderful for doulas, for
Yeah.
other healers, for energy
Hmm.
workers, and for moms.
IBCLCs.
Yeah,
Yes.
IBCLC to do those releases right there on the spot.
Chiropractors.
I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Yes,
Nannies, au pairs, parents, anybody.
love it."
Grandmas.
Yeah, yeah, amazing, amazing, Ruth. I'm so excited to share this and your work more, and so I'm just so glad for you being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Like I said, I could talk forever. Yeah.